thanks you for everybody for joining us for this webinar. Actually, I'm very excited. I haven't done that for a while to have an Alma webinar. So I'm very happy that you are with us today. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Let's see if I will be able to share it. And then we'll get started in a minute. Okay. Okay, so I hope you can see me and I hope you can see my presentation. And I wanted to welcome everybody for joining us today. And I wanted to start with first inviting you to ask questions, as many questions as possible. I'm going to have a brief update of half an hour, less than half an hour, and then we'll switch for Q&A. Please send the Q&A in the Q&A in the line below, and I will try as much as I can. In the chat, it's even better. Send them in the chat, please, and I will be able to see them and to answer you while I'm ending my presentation. What you see now is two pictures that I took from the current conflict. I don't know if you can see in the video, interceptions just above Alma Center here in the current week. And what we can learn from this video is that it's much less. The barrages are much smaller than they used to be, even though it's again war, again my daughter is not going to school, again we have to run to the bomb shelter in 15 seconds for so many times a day. Again, what the other picture is IDF strikes in Lebanon, which is again after we were promised that there isn't Hezbollah next to the border with Lebanon. There are fighting there as well, and Hezbollah attacked IDF forces on the borderline with anti-tank missiles. At the same time, I want to say that the people of the North, and I visited them last week, they are strong, they are with a lot of hope, they want to see the job done, they want to see a different reality being created, and all of us here understand today that Israel and the United States are making history. They are making history, and we should not give up this opportunity. We should do the best we can to seize the opportunity to bring the Middle East to a different place. There is an opportunity. There are a lot of risks. We'll talk about it, but there is an opportunity here. If I'm going forward now to what is truly happening over here, I want to start, since I started with the personal story, I want to start with Hezbollah. We are publishing a graph like this every day, so you're most welcome to follow us and to see this in our platforms. And you can see two things here. First, the drones are in a different place today. Hezbollah got much better with the drones. Hezbollah created much more drones, manufactured much more drones, launching much more drones, and that more than 30% of the attacks are actually drones attacks. It is correct for today. It is correct in general. This is very interesting. And we understand that that Hezbollah learned. And by the way, we wrote about it before the current campaign. We knew this was coming. But the good news is that Israel also learned, and we didn't see any casualties because of the drones, and we saw very little damage because of the drones. And I am not even sure that any of these drones ended up in his target. So these are the good news here. Both sides learn, but we are better in this respect. Hezbollah started the war with 25,000 rockets that were left from the previous campaign, and probably a little bit more, or more than 1,000 drones. I don't know how much was left of that because of IDF strikes. Until now, it launched about 400, a little bit more than 400 missiles, or rockets, actually. I don't include what happened this evening in the center of Israel. I don't have all the information about this incident. The second trend that you can see is that yesterday there was a decline in the amount of launchings, and I'm curious to see how today will end up. But if there will be a trend of decline, so clearly it's good news. I can tell that IDF published today that it attacked a massive attack of launchers, especially in the western area, in south of the Litani River, which are good news. And also today we saw a decline in the amount of attacks towards the western area. But again, I am not sure that this will continue, and we see how things will play out in the near future. Hezbollah, by the way, is using 3 types of drones: Shahid 101, Sayad, and Ababil. Until now, we saw mainly the Shahid and the Sayad. These are drones at the size of up to 2 meters. They can carry up to 10 kilos in various ranges. So I understand they are not small, and it is challenging, and I'm very happy that we do succeed in intercepting most of them. Or I don't know, they're not ending in their targets. I don't know exactly how. I want to show you a video of how this looks like from Hezbollah's point of view. This is a video that Hezbollah created. In a minute, you'll see the yellow logo of Hezbollah. So a few points about this video. First, Nahariya and Kiryat Shmona, which are the targets of Hezbollah in this video, are defined as settlements. And northern Israel is an occupied area. So a little bit about how the narrative here. And you can see in this video launching of drones and launching of rockets. My feeling is, and I've said it with the first picture as well, is that less rockets are being launched in every barrage. What you see now, by the way, is IDF soldiers. Hezbollah is using our social media videos. IDF soldiers intercepting or trying to intercept a Hezbollah drone here in northern Israel. This is the launcher of Hezbollah, a launcher of about 20 rockets, almost 20 rockets, and that's less than what we had in the previous war. And not all launchings are like that. Sometimes I hear less blasts. And this is from what we hear around us. Again, I'm saying all of that very carefully. This time, Israel decided not to evacuate the communities next to the border. Neither Kiryat Shmona of 25,000 people, that 2/3 of them came back, or half of them came back, and no other small communities which are based literally at the borderline. And people ask me, how come? Like in October 8, 2023, when Hezbollah started the war, immediately people left. People left, by the way, started to leave the day before, in October 7. And now it's not happening. Even if people are leaving, it's not at the same scale. Israelis understand that we should stay, that we shouldn't abandon the communities. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to get to the bomb shelter in 15 seconds. You understand that it's impossible. And it's a challenge to live like that with sirens of, I don't know, 10 times a day, like what they're having in Kiryat Shmona. And yet the decision was not to evacuate the communities. And I want to explain what's the difference, how come it happened. Okay. And I want to do that by showing you this map. The biggest success of the previous war was to push Hezbollah away from defense and to create a situation that Hezbollah is no longer capable of carrying out a big invasion, October 7 style, as it planned, by the way, and it was prepared. Today we understand that even though it is not capable of doing that, and maybe it will try infiltration of a squad of small forces into the communities, we do understand that if IDF will not be on the borderline, Hezbollah will be on the borderline. We do understand that it will be on the borderline also with anti-tank missiles. And anti-tank missiles cannot be intercepted by Iron Dome. We don't have sirens when these are launched. And we don't have any defensive answer for this. And that's why it was so important when this campaign started, immediately to send IDF forces to the borderline, to cross the border and to settle not only in the 5 hills that we kept between the 2 wars, but also in between them, to create a buffer that will not enable Hezbollah to come closer to the border. Of course, it's not 100% when you fight guerrilla forces and terror, but this is the idea. And what is happening now is that Hezbollah do launch anti-tank missiles against the positions, against IDF forces inside Lebanon. And we had 2 soldiers who were killed and 10 soldiers, more than 10 soldiers who were wounded. I also added here a nice picture here. It's not because of the view. You can see the red roofs here. That's my community. And the hill on the horizon line, and I hope that you can see my clicker, the hill on the horizon line is one of those Israeli posts in Lebanon that we kept since the previous war. From this hill, rockets were launched to Israel in the previous war, and that's why IDF is there. You can understand the topography in the region. You can understand that those who are standing on top of that hill can actually control everything that is below, and that's why it's so important that IDF is there watching over us. One more point. We maneuvered only in the areas next to the green points here that you see, meaning only a few kilometers into Lebanon. I don't know, 5-7 kilometers into Lebanon. But the distance between the Litani River that you can see in the map and the borderline is actually much bigger than that, is up to 27 kilometers. This means that there is an area of 20 square kilometers that nobody maneuvered in. And the expectation was, when the war ended, that the Lebanese government will disarm Hezbollah in those areas. And it stated that it disarmed Hezbollah in those areas, and clearly it didn't happen. The weapons that is now being launched at us is being launched from south of the Litani and north of the Litani. And it was not brought to south of the Litani in the past few days. It was there. Can give us a little bit of understanding of how the end game should look like when we discuss the Lebanese government. Well, all of them are dead. Left to it's Khamenei. Hassan Nasrallah Khamenei, we killed him last Saturday, the opening strike of the campaign. Hassan Nasrallah, we killed him in the previous war, the leader of Hezbollah. And Qasem Soleimani was killed by the Americans in Iraq, the head of Quds Force, and actually the person who led the idea of creating a campaign against Israel, a multi-front campaign against Israel, not only with rockets, but also with ground forces and ballistic missiles that will be able to destroy the state of Israel. This is what all of them wanted. This is why Hezbollah is still committed to Iran. It's part of the identity of Hezbollah. And people are asking, how come Hezbollah joined the war? The working assumption of Israel is that Hezbollah will join in. And the working assumption of Hezbollah is that they will have to join in. Even with all the prices that they are now paying, they knew that they have to join in. And this is what they had done. They didn't do it just as a statement. They do it because they are a highly religiously motivated group, and they believe that they should fight until their last soldier for the cause. And the cause is the distribution of the Islamic Republic values all across the Middle East, first and foremost in Lebanon. And one of those values is the destruction of the state of Israel. Their flag, by the way, is also, you have a rifle on their flag. The campaign in Lebanon now is the very campaign on the identity of the state of Lebanon, on the identity of Hezbollah, and on the future of Lebanon. And I hope that the Lebanese this time will choose differently. Excuse me. What Israel is doing. A few days ago, Israel instructed the South Lebanese and the Muslim Shiite Lebanese, or the Lebanese living in the Dahia, which is the Hezbollah suburb in Beirut, to completely evacuate. At the same time, and before that and after that, warnings were given also to specific buildings. I deliberately put here a translation to English of the Arabic version of the Israeli warning to evacuate, because I truly want to say something here. For Israel, the issue of collateral damage, of preventing collateral damage, is part of the effort of the war, is an inherent effort of the war to prevent collateral damage among the Lebanese. Look what I'm saying. The Lebanese that hosted Hezbollah in their homes, in their children's bedroom, for Israeli IDF and decision makers, and from the last soldier to the officer, to the most superior officer, part of the mission is to warn those Lebanese populations in South Lebanon and in Beirut to prevent collateral damage. Very good example is this. This is a hotel in Beirut. You can see the heat, and you can see that all the rooms that were not heat, there is still electricity. It was a very accurate attack. I chose to put here also those who were killed in that room, not all of them. Daoud Elizadeh was killed elsewhere, but all the others, almost all of them were killed in that room. And this is how Iran activated Hezbollah before the current war, before the previous war, but in much more motivation, power, involvement, intervenient, whatever noun you want to put here, training it, arming it, involved in its decision making, and making sure that Hezbollah remains loyal to the cause that I've mentioned. These guys were responsible for this mission. As you can see, they are Iranian commanders, part of the Lebanese core of the Quds Force, and Israel killed them after warning them and telling them to leave Lebanon, which they didn't. Since then, about 150 Iranians, IRGC personnel left Lebanon, and the Lebanese government itself ordered them to leave as well, and decided that no Iranian can enter Lebanon without a visa. This is a very good and very important decision. And only one minister in the Lebanese government opposed to this decision. Guess who he is? He's the Hezbollah minister. That when he was nominated, people said in Lebanon, no, he's not exactly Hezbollah, he's not a politician, he's a doctor. He was against that. I think this is when I'm talking about the Lebanese government and the gap between the statements and the deeds, maybe this is one of the first deeds that I can actually talk about. At the same time, Israel is attacking, as I've said, launchers, is attacking commanders. Today we killed the head of the Southern Command of Hezbollah in South Lebanon, of the Nasser unit, one of the two units that are in south of the Litani River. I hope more will be killed. Commanders are important. And we attacked the banks, called Hassan banks. This is also a very important act. Israel carried out hundreds, almost 1,000 attacks in Lebanon since the campaign started. It's a huge amount of attacks, but it's not necessarily enough. I will touch upon that later. I want to move forward a little bit to talk about Iran, but before that, one last thing about the Lebanese. The warnings of evacuation of the Lebanese brought to more than 600,000 that are evacuated from the south and Beirut. This is a huge burden on the Lebanese government. People are complaining, but there is no protest by the Muslim Shiite base of Hezbollah, protest of people going out to the streets. This is not, it's just not happening, unfortunately. I wish it will happen in the near future, but it's not happening. And the feeling is that the loyalty of these people to Hezbollah is like a soccer team. They can criticize it, they can demand to fire the coach, but they are not changing the team, at least not for now. Now, the question is, what is the other team? Unfortunately, the average Muslim Shiite in Lebanon doesn't have too much of an alternative. Doesn't have too much of an alternative of who to vote for, and elections were postponed today. They were supposed to be in the spring and they were postponed in 2 years. Who to vote for if it's not Hezbollah? In previous elections, Hezbollah and Amal, who is the second Muslim Shiite party in Lebanon, ran together. They are named as the Shiite couple in Lebanon. This is how they call them. And as I've said, this is the first time now that the ministers of Amal actually voted against Hezbollah in the Lebanese government. But the head of Amal is Nabih Berri, who is the head of the Lebanese parliament, and he's 88 years old. How Amal would look like once he is gone, I am not sure. I'm not sure there is Amal after he's gone. So it's a big question about the alternatives of the base of Hezbollah. And I will get back to Lebanon later on with the Q&A. Let's move forward to Iran. Actually, this is why we all gathered here, right? And let's take a look about statistics again. And again, we are publishing those statistics daily. You are most welcome to enter to our social media and to watch those statistics. And at the same time, reminding everybody, you're most welcome to write questions in the chat, and I will try to answer as many as possible in the end of my presentation. So what can we learn from those statistics of Iran? That they, just like Hezbollah, by the way, they do manage the amount of weapons, and they don't waste everything. They don't launch without calculation. they launch a very measured and small amount of missiles every day in order to enable them to launch them for a long time. And they are playing the game of a war of attrition. Hezbollah and Iran, both of them, hoping that Trump, Israelis, northern Israelis, whoever it is, the Gulf countries will get tired, will end it, and they will survive this. And this is what the graphs are actually telling us. Maybe one more thing about that. There are a lot of statements in Israel that the decline in the launching is also thanks to the fact that Israel is attacking the ballistic missiles capabilities. I will elaborate on that. I agree with that. But again, it doesn't contradict the fact that Iran is preparing for launching every day, very few, sending all Israelis to bomb shelters, and no routine, no schools, debate here in Israel how to go back to routine. This is what they want. The same logic goes to the Gulf countries. People are asking how come Iran attacked 11 countries outside of Israel. Israel is 12. How come it had done that? How come it attacked Qatar, Oman? What's the interest? The interest was to create a situation that America will not finish the job, to create a situation that the Gulf countries will ask Trump to stop and not finish the job, to create a lot of pressure in those countries. They are also lying about what they do. I'll give an example from Turkey. They said that one missile that was launched for Turkey, towards Turkey, was a mistake. They didn't mean to. So today another one was launched. I don't know. The president of Iran said, yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to. We only meant to do it against military targets. And while he was speaking, the airport in Dubai was attacked. It's an indication of confusion. It's an indication of crisis of leadership in Iran, but it's also an indication of eventually trying to create pressure on those countries, following the legacy of Khamenei, and maybe that way surviving this with a high cost for everybody, but surviving this. One word about Turkey. It is right for all the countries, but one word about Turkey itself. All countries understand that Iran is a threat. These are all Sunni countries. All countries understand that ballistic missiles in the hand of Iran is a bad idea, or nuclear capability even worse. All countries understand that it's a bad regime, that the ideology is against the very idea of the Sunnis in those countries. But they prefer to have a weak Islamic Republic over a chaos in Iran. And actually, my assessment here is that the most probable scenario is that there will be a long period of chaos in Iran. It will take time until Iranian people, if they will overthrow the regime eventually, will find the leader, will have elections, democracy. All of that takes time. And it will take between months to years until we will see stability in Iran after this campaign. It sounds a catastrophe, but it is better than having a ballistic Iran and a nuclear Iran. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I think that the worst case scenario for the Gulf countries is chaos in Iran. And they want to see the Islamic Republic survive this, but not necessarily as strong as it used to be. And that's why they are not participating. And this is what the Islamic Republic is counting on. And I truly hope that from here, I will be able to carry the message to all those countries that were attacked by the Islamic Republic to join the campaign and to make sure that the Iranian people will be able to bring a change as quickly as possible. Because as long as there will be power in the end of what's left of the Islamic Republic, it will take longer time. We learned that campaigns that are not full power strong are taking longer and taking more lives than campaigns that are going step by step and very slowly. One word about Syria. And I was asked about that many times in the past week. On the one hand, Ahmed Ashara's main mission now is to stay quiet and watch the news and not to do anything. Enable everything to fly in the skies of Syria back and forth and not do anything. At the same time, he enforced its forces on the border with Lebanon. And there is a question whether its jihadi forces will go against Hezbollah after Hezbollah slaughtered them during the civil war in Syria a few years ago. It looks like it's not within the interest of Ahmed Ashara. He is very much focused in his mission to rebuild Syria, to make Syria great again, okay? It looks like he will not get any support of United States if he will open another front here now. But what I've learned of October 7th is that it's really difficult for me to anticipate what these guys, the way they think, the way they believe, what their intentions are. So I cannot overrule completely this option. One word about Iraq. Iraq is a good example for things that didn't go well, and there are still pro-Iranian militias in Iraq. For instance, only in the past weekend, they claimed responsibility for 50 attacks with drones and missiles in Iraq and in the nearby countries, including against the American embassy in Baghdad. So when President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are talking about the proxies of Iran and how dangerous they are talking about Hezbollah in Lebanon, these militias in Iraq, and the Houthis of Yemen, which I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, I believe that they received the orders to wait and see and not to interfere yet, but it may happen sooner than later. The effort of Israel and a big part of the effort of the Americans is against the arsenal of ballistic missiles. We published, and you see here the pictures of about 30 types of different to various ranges that are now attacking the Gulf countries and attacking Israel. The missile here, Hormashtar, which is for, I'm probably not saying that correctly, that are for 2,000 kilometers, also have a warhead of cluster bombs. And when we missed that, as we did yesterday, there was a hit with 16 areas of hits of the cluster bombs in different places, in 16 different places in the center of Israel, in different towns. It's spread in over huge areas. And when you see those pictures, you understand that how important it is to take this capability away of Iran. How do you do that? And how many are these? We don't know how many. We had different numbers, between 1,000 to 2,500, but we don't know for which types. But clearly, they have enough for now. So what's the tactic? First is to go after the launchers. So you see ambush of drones. This is an example that IDF published, not only by the IDF, but also Americans. Drones are ambushing the launchers, eliminating the launchers, and that way there are missiles that stock in the warehouses underground, but there are not enough launchers to launch them. So that's one thing to do it. Another way to do it is to attack the silos, to attack the bases, the underground bases of the ballistic missiles. We checked 9 bases in southern Iran, that 8 of them were attacked and almost completely destroyed. You can see an example of one of them, how the silos look like. And the idea is to block these and to make sure that they are not capable of launching the missiles from those places. And so there is a success in this as well. And you can see where this base is not far from the Arab Gulf, probably shooting at those areas. A nuclear issue. Those facilities of the nuclear, whether it's Isfahan, whether it's Bordeaux, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Natanz, all of them were attacked and attacked successfully in June, and some of it was destroyed. The biggest discussion now is around the enriched uranium. Where is the enriched uranium? It's in 400 kilos of 60% enriched uranium, meaning it's not for civilian use. Where is that? And there are some publications and reports that it's in Isfahan, but we don't know that for sure. And one of the end games of this war is to find this enriched uranium and to take it out of the hands of the Islamic Republic. The last point I want to make before moving forward to your questions is about the Hormuz Straits. And President Trump talked about eliminating the Navy. There is a success in this, but we didn't finish the job yet. You can see that 3 of the 5 bases were destroyed. The publications were of around 40 ships, I think, maybe even more. Basically, there was a success with regard to the Iranian Navy, but there are 2 issues here. One is that there may be small boats, maybe even unmanned boats, that can attack ships in the Straits of Hormuz. And second, the insurance companies are not willing to take any chances, and that's why the straits are not really closed. But there is very little traffic in the straits, and that's why you see the rise in the prices of the oil. I want to end with some kind of a graphic that maybe we can develop it a little bit further, but I was trying to summarize the whole discussion of how do we truly create a change in history here. And I think that what I wrote here is correct for Iran, and it's correct for Lebanon as well, because the military effort is important. I always said that once the Islamic Republic will fall, it will pose a lot of difficulties of Hezbollah. But the military effort, it does not stand by itself. And eventually, there is responsibility on the local people, whether it's the Lebanese people or the Iranian people, to act against those evil ideologies. At the same time, there is responsibility on the regional countries and the international countries to follow the money and to stop the money that is going into Iran or into the hands of Hezbollah. And this is happening as we speak in both places. There are a lot of things that could be done not only by Israel and the United States, and I hope that eventually things will be done and there will be a change over here. Okay, I'm ending the presentation now. Wow, I see a lot of questions and I'm very happy for that. This is why I decided to have this webinar today, to be capable of answering your questions. I hope I will be able eventually. Maybe we don't know everything, but I will try to do my best to answer you as much as possible. Okay, the first question is about any diversity between the strategy of the US and the strategy of Israel. To be honest, my feeling is, and it's my feeling for a very long time, is that there is high coordination between the countries. I think the first proof that I got for it is actually in Gaza, is the agreement around Hamas and what was happening with this agreement. I felt that we received all the hostages and we stayed in Gaza. This was something that nobody imagined that will happen. And I believe it's also thanks to the good relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Maybe there are differences. Of course, the United States has its own interest. Israel has its own interest. There are disagreements here and there, but in general, there is very good collaboration. I think this also goes to the military level. The fact that Israel was joined to CENTCOM long before the war contributed greatly to the capability to create a joint campaign of Americans and Israelis with, even if it's passive, the support of the Gulf countries. Amazing, and this is thanks to the organizational change that brought us into CENTCOM. Whether the campaign against Hezbollah is coordinated with the Americans, I believe that strategically, yes. Tactically, I'm not sure. It's very different because Americans are not attacking in Lebanon. So here we are much more independent with, again, tactically. Strategically, I believe there are all the time close coordinations because the two campaigns are connected. Clearly, Israel is taking the advantage of what is happening in Iran to get rid of the biggest proxy of Iran in the region, which is Hezbollah, and it's part of the goals of the campaign. Trump said it very clearly. How much it is diverting resources from strikes on Iran, what's more important to Israel. As far as I understand, and again, it's hardly spoken, as far as I understand, we can do it. And we were prepared to do it. This was the working assumption that we will have to bomb in Iran and we will have to go to a campaign in Lebanon. And in this respect, I cannot even overrule options of expanding the campaign in Lebanon as well. Don't the laser handle the drones? It's a good question. I don't know. It is not being published. I don't know what is handling the drones. Whoever it is doing a good job, and I hope it will continue. How many Hezbollah launchers are destroyed last war and during this campaign? I wouldn't say launchers. Let's talk about the arsenal in general. And I will put it this way. We degraded 80% of the arsenal of rockets of Hezbollah. If before the war, Hezbollah was holding 150,000 mortars and 65,000 rockets, the publications in Israel were that 80% were destroyed. 20% was left. So if you calculate the numbers, it's about 25,000 rockets that were left. Can we completely disarm Hezbollah? It's another question here. No, I don't think so, to be honest. I think that if all the three parts in my circle here will act, maybe in the future, but we can keep the monster small. And the monster grew a little bit in the past year or so since the ceasefire. With everything that Israel had done, to remind everybody, we attacked in Lebanon in average of twice a day in the past year or so. And it was not enough. Hezbollah was rebuilding its power, not as it used to be. It didn't get back to October 6, 2023, but it was rebuilding its capabilities. And I hope that once everybody will work together, even if it's not completely disarmed, it will be in a different reality. The same question goes to Hamas. I think, I'm sorry to say it, but I think it's different. I think there is a difference between Hezbollah and Hamas. First and foremost, I believe that terrain is terrain when we speak about security. Gaza is much smaller, and we can deal with that. There is room to deal with that in a very creative way with Hamas in Gaza. It will take, again, a campaign again if we truly want to disarm Hamas in Gaza. I don't think they will voluntarily do that. Okay, is there anything left of Tzadal, which is the South Lebanese army? No, there is nothing left of Tzadal. This was too many years ago. To rebuild it, I don't know. For now, Israel ordered, as I've said, all South Lebanese to evacuate, and the majority of the population in South Lebanon, south of the Litani River, are the base of Hezbollah, the Muslim Shiites. And as I've said, they support it. They had enough years to develop the support. The very few villages are Christians, and many people of the Christian villages left them. Very few stayed. Very few villages are fully populated, if ever, I'm not even sure. And I don't see how this is going to balance Hezbollah, even if we create something like that. Okay, there is a question is about phosphor, which I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. So maybe it's my English. If you can clarify, I will answer your question. Russian army in the region. Is there a Russian army in the region? Yes, there is Russian army in the region in Syria. The Shah enabled them to stay. Not as it used to be, because the biggest effort is in Ukraine. Is Russian army a danger to Israel? I don't think so. I don't think, in general, I don't think that the Russian or the Chinese, by the way, would want to have a conflict with the Americans. And since this war demonstrated the tight relationship between Israel and America, I don't see how Russia or China would want to get involved in this. They do help Iran. They do provide weapons or components or intelligence, but that doesn't mean that they are actively, offensively, will be involved. I don't see this happening unless they will find any connection to what they are interested in, which is Ukraine for Russia or Taiwan for China, which I don't know. Israeli soldiers standing on the border in the north are getting killed. Is the IDF considering they might have to go in with ground forces? I want to say something painful for me to say. Israeli soldiers getting killed on the northern border, on the southern border, in different borders of Israel to defend Israeli civilians. When we stopped following the idea that soldiers should defend civilians, we got October 7th with hundreds, more than thousands of civilians that were killed. It's very simple. Israel is a state with a strong army that's supposed to protect its civilians. And I'm saying that painfully because we are all ex-soldiers, mothers to soldiers, women, wives of soldiers, sisters of soldiers, whatever, or brothers of women soldiers. But that's the reality. This is how it should be. Soldiers should protect civilians, and Hezbollah, it is launching anti-tank missiles against the IDF soldiers in South Lebanon, which is a proof, by the way, that Hezbollah is there, and all the statements of the Lebanese government, it disarmed Hezbollah in South Lebanon, were fake. But since the IDF is there, those anti-tank missiles are launched against them and not against civilians, which are not evacuated this time, because there is defense. There was no defense in October 2023. We were not protected in October 2023. And the situation today is very different. Is there any domestic leader in Iran who can take the mantle of the leadership? First, I want to remind everybody that in 1979, Khomeini was in France, and he came with an airplane and landed in Tehran and took the country. Everything can happen. Yet, I don't know if Reza Pahlavi is an option, because it seems is much more an option to the diaspora than to those inside. Yes, it is a problem. We don't know who the domestic leader will be. And this is one of the reasons that I've said that we are going to experience a period of chaos in Iran until things will settle down. How can we ensure a non-nuclear Iran for the long term? If the Islamic Republic is gone, we ensured it, that's for sure. If the Islamic Republic is not gone, it will be much more of a challenge. And yet I would say that to create a bomb, it's not something that you can do in 2 days or in 2 months or maybe even in 2 years. It takes a long time. And so if we will succeed in truly eliminating all the nuclear facilities and taking off the enriched uranium and creating an effective monitoring mechanism and weakening the Islamic Republic to the point that they don't even have the money to nuclear project, maybe even if they stay, we will succeed in this. Does the Lebanese armed forces have the strength to defeat and weaken Hezbollah? The question, I will answer you at the Prime Minister Thatcher way. This is not the question. The question is whether they have the will to defeat Hezbollah. And the answer is no. They don't have the will. Half of the Lebanese armed forces are Muslim Shiites. You can find that the same family, somebody who is with Hezbollah, and the other guy who is, the other brother who is with the Lebanese armed forces. The Lebanese armed forces is collaborating with Hezbollah in concealing Hezbollah military activity in South Lebanon. When I'm saying that, and I'm using present tense, I should say conceals, because it has been happening for 20 years at least. And even if tons of money will be spent on the Lebanese armed forces, they are afraid, for some reason, I know the reason, to go against Hezbollah. The Lebanese are highly afraid of a civil war, highly afraid. I believe maximum pressure. I believe they should take the chance, but they are not willing to take the chance. They are afraid of that. Because they experienced, by the way, 2 civil wars in the past. By the way, the questions that I skip are those that I don't know the answers for, okay? Excuse me if I don't know all the answers. I'm trying to do my best. Next 2 weeks in the war. If I had a crystal ball, I don't know how the next 2 weeks in the war. My bet is that, as I've said, Iran and Hezbollah would want to drag us to a war of attrition and then make us stop without gaining the achievement that we are looking for. So if this is my bet, the tactic is not to extend the amount of attacks and not to waste all the weapons that are still in their hands. To be very, how do you say it in English, moderate in how you handle the shooting. Lebanon is also a Christian country. Is there a possibility of strengthening a Christian leader to diminish the Hezbollah minister? Yes, of course. The leader is Christian. The president in Lebanon is always Christian. The prime minister in Lebanon is always Muslim Sunni. The head of parliament is always Muslim Shiite. This is how it works. The parliament is always divided, half for the Christians, half for the Muslims. The Muslim bloc is always divided between the Muslim Shiite and the Muslim Sunnis, and a little bit for the Druze, which are not Muslims, but they are part of the Muslim bloc. Sorry that it is complex, but this is what it is. And yet, the Christian president of Lebanon that was nominated after the previous war in early 2025, with the blessing of the Americans, without the blessing of Hezbollah, what could be better than that? Nominated an advisor for the rehabilitation of the state of Lebanon, who is a member of Hezbollah, who was a minister of Hezbollah. So I don't know. The Christians of Lebanon are mostly against Hezbollah, harsh criticism against Hezbollah, but their leader, who is the president, who was, by the way, the commander of the Lebanese armed forces that refrained from disarming Hezbollah in the past years before the war, they're not doing that. They're just not delivering. In the evacuated areas of South Lebanon, is the IDF inspecting house-to-house Hezbollah weaponry? Not yet. It's not happening yet. Maybe it will. I don't know. But there are airstrikes in those places, and Hezbollah is hiding the weapons inside their houses. I want to say something around that, about the human shield issue. We published in our website, in the research page, you will be able to see a human shield map. We took what IDF published, mainly, not only, but mainly what IDF published of evidence of rockets inside the bedrooms, inside the kitchen, inside the cemeteries, inside the villages. And we gathered more than 50 sites like this that we could see of the previous war, not of the current campaign, that IDF found those weapons, and we put it on all in one map so people can get in and see how it looks like to have a tunnel beneath a cemetery, and to have weapons in the kitchen, or in or a truck in the backyard with a launcher of rockets. I welcome all of you to see how it looks like. Yes, I believe that in areas that IDF didn't maneuver, it's the same situation. I believe that a lot of it was attacked by Air Force, but not all of it. If and when US pulls out of Iran, what happens for Israel regarding the north and the war with Hezbollah? It's a good question. What is Israel's end goal regarding Hezbollah? Look, the IDF spokesperson said different, that the goal is to disarm Hezbollah. As I've said, I believe it's very ambitious. And I think that the goal is to strategically weaken Hezbollah as much as possible. And I believe that afterwards, or at the same time, we should see efforts by the Lebanese themselves that I've talked about, and by international community that I've talked about. clearly, if the campaign against Iran will end without a regime change, it will empower Hezbollah that they actually survive this. And that's why one of the terms or the conditions for the strategic weakening of Hezbollah is the regime change in Iran. That's why it's so important. Another question. We have only a few minutes. I will try to answer. I don't know how many do we have. Wow, I'm sorry. I will not be able to answer all the questions. It's truly a lot of questions. So let's take just two more. Going forward in this war, as opposed to the long term, considering Iran's and Hezbollah's missiles interventions as they exist today, which of them is more dangerous for Israel in the coming weeks? Oh, I live up north. For me to get to the bomb shelter in 15 seconds, it is a huge problem. This evening, there was an attack against the center of Israel. I was tied in Zoom and briefing, so I don't know exactly what's the outcome, but we don't know how many missiles Hezbollah has that can get to Tel Aviv. It's a problem as well. To explain. The missiles of Iran, when they are launched 2,000 kilometers from here, we get an alert that missiles were launched from Iran. And then we have around 5 minutes to get safely to the bomb shelter. When missiles are launched by Hezbollah, either to the north or to Tel Aviv, there is no advanced alert. So we have between 0 time to a minute and a half. And in Tel Aviv, people are used to have 5 minutes. So it's very confusing. And that's why it creates a risk. I think the ballistic missiles of Iran are creating more damage. If they hit, they destroy a neighborhood. The rockets of Hezbollah are creating less damage. They destroy a house, they destroy a room. The question is how many missiles Hezbollah is holding, how many heavy missiles, how many precision-guided missiles Hezbollah is holding, and we don't know the answer for that. Probably much less than it used to have, that's for sure. Have you heard reports that Qatar is now kicking Hamas leaders out of their country because Hamas declined to denounce Iran's attack on Qatar? No, I didn't hear those reports. And if it's true, I am so happy because I've been saying that since October 7, 2023, that once Qatar will overthrow Hamas from its country, things will change deeply in Gaza. Back then, we still had hostages, right? The war was supposed to be much shorter if everybody would act against terrorists the same way. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I'm extremely sorry, but I want to respect everybody that joined us today. So thank you very much. I know you have a lot of questions. You know what? I will try to schedule another Zoom and maybe answer more questions. I know this is very important and this is why I've done that. I'm very happy for this connection. Keep following us. Keep asking us questions. You are most welcome to send me some questions on my WhatsApp, my number, or in the email. WhatsApp is better. And I truly hope that very soon all of us will be able to meet in better times, in peaceful times. Israel is strong. Israelis are strong. This is what I have learned from everything that is happening here. And that the Iranians will get, and the Lebanese will get a new future as well. Thank you for all of us for joining us.